Hi student, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 16th of December 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says life on the edge, border units lack basic amenities. So what is the context here? So there was a parliamentary panel which was looking at the living conditions, irregularities, issues as well as the problems that have been faced by the guarding forces along the border and found that there were major cracks in the administrative as well as the working conditions. So what are these major cracks that we are speaking about? One is the drinking water, then you have the road connectivity, electricity, the health as well as the gadget deficiency. So what this parliamentary panel has gone on to say is that all these areas need immediate assistance and will also require the governmental support. So let's look in deep with respect to this article. So what this article says is that nearly 82% of the border outposts of all Indo-Tibetan border police deployed along the inhospitable and rugged China border do not have access to the drinking water. So what this means is that majority of the people who are guarding the security along the border areas have no access to the drinking water. They are consuming at times the polluted water. So what this means is that we are not providing them the drinking water who are saving our lives. So what this government panel has gone on to recommend is that the government will have to take up certain initiatives. Make sure that there is a possibility of supplying piped water, regular water or any which ways where they are able to have edible drinkable water. Why? Because it is the fundamental right that is guaranteed to every citizen of India. So the Supreme Court has previously laid that water is a fundamental right and the soldiers being the protectors of all the citizens of India will also have to be provided with edible drinking water. So what this panel has gone on to say is that please provide the supplied pipe regular drinking water for all these border outfits so that this must be done immediately. What this article further goes on to say in terms of statistics is about 40% roads are completely unconnected. So what this means is, let's say there is a security threat or there is an external aggression. During this particular period, we would not be able to move our vehicles. And let's say there is also another case where there is a health emergency. So during this particular period, you will need the medical assistance, you will need the medical experts coming up and making sure that this particular person is safe. But what happens is about 40% of the roads are unconnected. So this can be a problem to the nation. On one side from the external aggression, on the other side we are not able to save our soldiers in case of an health emergency. So what this article further goes on to speak is in terms of the large number of vacancies in the medical field. So what this article says is that there have been number of vacancies in the medical expertise and this can impact our forces. How? Because number of people who are working in this area are facing bleak conditions, the extreme cold temperatures, and these people can enforce and go through a number of ailments like the high altitude pulmonary edema or the acute cerebral edema or the loss of memory, and about 400 personnel previously have even suffered slow blindness as well as trench foot. When all these soldiers who are taking care of the citizens are giving out the lives to the people, these people will also have to be saved, for which what we need is the medical expertise. But the problem right now is there has been an increase in the vacancies of the medical people which is not being taken care. And at the same time, what we also have to understand is all this has to be accommodated with relevant amount of electricity supply. And when you look into the statistics, only about 24% have a regular supply of electricity. The rest are dependent on the generators. So what we have to understand in this case is electricity is one thing which keeps them warm. Electricity is something which will help them get all relevant information, but this is not being provided. So there is a infrastructure dearth in this particular area. So it has requested the government to make sure that you invest more, provide the infrastructure and make sure there is more funding with respect to the electricity as well. And finally, what this article has gone on to further say is in terms of the basic training gadgets as well as facilities. So the modern equipments like the firing simulator or interactive touch display, these are something which is required for the armed forces so that they are in an active mode. In case there is an aggression, they are able to take it on. But currently what you will see again is the short in the supply of these basic gadgets, and this is what the recommendation of the panel is, which says that all these type of gadgets and facilities will have to be provided. So ultimately what this committee goes on to say is that we need to have a modernization of the force, which must be the utmost priority of this particular government. So there are people who are losing their lives, one because of the enemy aggression and also because of the vagaries of the nature, and it becomes very important and imperative for the government to assist the ground forces by providing them all these opportunities. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says government says Supreme Court misread the note. So even before we understand this article, what we need to understand is the judgment given by the Supreme Court in reference to the Rafale deal. So the Supreme Court in its judgment has said that it found nothing wrong with the deal of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi government that signed with the France government to purchase about 36 Rafale fighter jets. So the Supreme Court has gone on to say that it is satisfied and that there is no occasion to doubt the process of this particular government. So what we have to understand in this particular case is that the Supreme Court has looked into this particular deal in great detail and has come out with the judgment which has given a clean check to the government. So what the Supreme Court has said is, when it comes to the defense, it is unlike any other tender. So there are number of tenders in the economy which involves the roads, the bridges and so on, but defense procurement is something different. And when it is something to do with the nation's security, when it comes to do with the nation's defense, what we also need to understand is there can't be complete scrutiny of this. Why? Because there needs to be certain clandestine secret agencies, secret things which are always looking for some loopholes as well as certain defaults within this particular procurement. This should not be let out in the open media, and that is why the scrutiny that needs to be given to the defense can be completely controlled, and this gives the leeway to the government to keep certain agencies or certain outputs of this particular deal in a secretive manner. So what the Supreme Court has gone on to say is, so it becomes very necessity for the government to procure certain fourth and fifth generation of fighter aircraft. Why? Because there has been external aggression on the western borders. We have the Pakistan, which is one of the enemy countries. On the northern front, we also have the Chinese, which has intermittent aggression. So in order to make sure that we are able to manage these people, in order to make sure that we have the required squadron of aircraft, what the Supreme Court has said is that it becomes very imperative to actually have the fourth as well as the fifth generation fighter aircraft. And at the same time, what the Supreme Court has gone on to say is that it is not the job of the court to look into the comparative details of the pricing. So the government has given that executive role. The government has that executive priority to take up certain decisions. So what should be the equipment, what should be the pricing, what should be the secretive agenda, all this will be decided by the government. So nowhere there can be the Supreme Court interference into it. No substantial matter of interference with reference to the procurement, pricing as well as the offset partner can be indulged by the Supreme Court. And at the same time, what the Supreme Court has further gone on to say is that there was no commercial favoritism, and at the same time no wrongdoing in the selection of the Indian offset partners by Dassault Aviation. So what it has gone on to say further is that with respect to all the perceptions that we see in the society, with respect to the perceptions of the individuals, one cannot go about fishing as well as rowing inquiry by the court, especially when it comes to the matters related to the defense. So when it comes to defense, there will have to be certain secret things which the government need not have to reveal outside, because there are agencies which are looking for this, so that this could be a potential threat to the country. So what it has gone on to say is that all writ petitions that were filed, the PILs that were filed in reference to the Rafale deal, stand dismissed. So this is the background. So what has happened in reference to this article is that the Supreme Court has given its judgment, where the judgment said that the report of the CAG has has been examined by the Public Accounts Committee. But whatever, the government has come up with certain changes within the statement where it has gone on to say, the government says it was a description of the procedure which is followed and should be read as report of the CAG is usually examined by the PAC. So what they sense is that there is one of the judgments that is passed by the Supreme Court, and the judgment had certain changes within the tenses. So what the government has gone on to say is, kindly make sure that these tenses and the statements are currently which is misquoted or misinterpreted are changed, and then they are given in a genuine framework. What the judgment had also said was only a redacted portion of the report was placed before the parliament. But what does the government want it to be? It should be read as is placed before the parliament. So there have been certain changes that the government wants, which is what it wants the Supreme Court to accommodate in this particular case. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article is important from your prelims perspective, and what we have to understand is certain facts which can be a potential question in your prelims examination, and this becomes very important from your environmental perspective. And what are we speaking about? The black bugs. So these are the female black bugs and this is the male black bug. So let's understand some of the facts. So the IUCN status for this is least concern. So the black bug is a large species of antelope native to the Indian subcontinent. So the blackbuck population is confined to areas in Maharashtra, Odisha, Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, with a few small pockets in central India. They are also found in Nepal and Pakistan. That's why it is called as the Indian subcontinent. So they are the state animals of Andhra Pradesh, Haryana and Punjab. So kindly remember, this could be asked in your prelims examination. So in India, hunting of blackbucks is prohibited under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So what we have to understand is, from the unique aspect, only males have the horns that are diverging, cylindrical, spherical and ringed throughout, and that is what we are speaking about. And this blackbuck is considered to be the fastest animal in the world next to cheetah. So these are the important facts that we have to remember when it comes to the blackbuck, because this can be a likely question in your prelims examination. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So what is this article all about? What we are speaking about is the Kaliyattam. So what is this Kaliyattam? So basically this is a sacred dance which projects the avatar of goddess Kali in the state of Kerala. So the first important point that we have to understand is, in case there is a question in your prelims examination, that Kaliyattam is part of the Kerala tradition. So what happens is, you see these performers, right? So these performers wear heavy makeup and they add on flamboyant costumes, and they have a spiritual ingredient in them that espouses the spiritual aspect of this Kaliyattam. And the other important point that we also have to understand is this Kandanar Kelan. So what is this? This is one of the characters that is being played within this Kaliyattam, and this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says, India, Nepal and Bhutan plan task force to protect the wildlife. So what is the context here? So the context clearly goes on to say, the governments of India, Nepal and Bhutan are actively considering having a joint task force for allowing free movement of wildlife across political boundaries and checking the smuggling of wildlife across the Kanchenjunga landscape, which is a transboundary region spread across Nepal, India and Bhutan. So kindly remember, the Kanchenjunga landscape is a region which spreads across Nepal, India as well as Bhutan. So in order to make sure that animals are able to move freely without any political borders defeating their purpose of free movement, they are planning to come up with one of the task forces. This will be taken up in the future classes because they still have not set it up, but as of now what would be our focus is in reference to the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. So what is this ICIMOD? So this is a region governmental learning and knowledge sharing center serving 8 regional member countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya. So which are the countries? Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal and Pakistan, and it is based in Kathmandu, Nepal. So what we have to understand in this particular case is we have seen the vagaries of climate change, the increase in the climate change, and this has increased the temperature as well, and this has caused a lot of influence on the stability of the fragile mountain ecosystems. So there have been people who are living in these mountain systems, they'll need certain assistance because of the vagaries of the climate change. So the ICIMOD basically aims to assist those mountain people to understand these changes because of the climate change, adapt to them, make the most of new opportunities while addressing upstream as well as the downstream issues. So what we have to understand in the current context is what is the significance. So we did just understand that the governments of India, Nepal and Bhutan are considering to have a joint task force. So one of the significant aspect of this International Center for Integrated Mountain Development is it supports all regional transboundary programs through partnerships. So what this organization as a whole does is it strengthens the networking, brings them on a common platform and facilitates the exchange of experience as well as serves as a region knowledge hub. So that is the major significant aspect of this ICIMOD. So apart from this, what it also works is to develop certain economically or environmentally sound mountain ecosystem so that they are able to improve the living standards of these mountain populations as well as making sure that there are certain sustainable models of ecosystem, and they're planning to make sure that these people have a future as well. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So this article says nations inch towards climate deal at UN summit, and what are we speaking about? The climate conference that was held in Katowice in Poland. So recently we had the COP24 summit in Poland, and what we will be discussing in the future classes is the complete discussion about this particular conference. What happened, what is the background, what are the challenges, what are the advantages, the pros, the cons, and all this will be discussed in great detail about the Katowice summit in the future classes. So we will not be discussing this particular article as of now. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article that we are speaking about says vital cog in the healthcare wheel. So what is important for us to understand is that recently what we had was the 4th World Health Organization Global Forum on Medical Devices, and this was held in Visakhapatnam. So kindly remember, this can be a likely question in your prelims examination because the 4th World Health Organization Global Forum was held in Visakhapatnam. The first global forum was held in Bangkok in 2010, the second in Geneva in 2013, and the third also in Geneva in 2017, and the fourth is happening in India in Visakhapatnam. So what we have to understand here is what is the objectives of this forum on medical devices. Basically what we have to understand here is they have certain set of objectives. The most important point is the accessibility to the medical devices. So when you look into what their objective is, what is that they do, so basically what they want to do is they want to define the methods of increasing the access to these set of medical devices in and around the world so that this particular objective is in line with the sustainable developmental model. So what you will realize is that all these advanced medical devices which are already developed in the developed world will be transmitted to the developing world, and there will be increase in the essential medical devices. And the next key important objective is that there are certain best practices. There have been evidences of best practices when it comes to the measuring of the health devices. So what will be happening is this particular forum will be regulating, accessing and managing all these type of medical devices so that they would be able to transfer these type of evidences to the other developing world. And the most important point we also have to understand is these set of forums will also make sure that they demonstrate the development and bring up innovative set of affordable technologies to respond to whatever global health priorities are. So they'll invest a lot of money, provide them the investing and make sure there is development of new medical devices because there are certain health priorities. So all these health priorities will be addressed by providing certain funding. And the most important point we also have to understand is that this particular tools which the World Health Organization also supports, which this World Health Organization also espouses, has certain tools and guidelines which will also be provided to the developing world so that they would be able to implement at a better level. So this is what is the objective of this particular forum. So what is the present context? So when you look into the present context, what this article goes on to say is that there is a particular stream of medical sciences which is called as biomedical engineering. So what is biomedical engineering? So this basically means you have certain principles, framework of the engineering, and when you use these principles into the field of biology as well as healthcare, it is called as the biomedical engineering. So this biomedical engineering has the bioengineers. So there has been one of the statistical evidence that this article goes on to say, which says that Global Health Observatory Data Repository notes that density of biomedical engineers and technicians in India per thousand of population decreased from 0.32 to 0.31 as well as to 0.23 in the year 2017. So what we have to understand here is these set of engineers who are very important when it comes to the biomedical engineering. There is a gradual decline or there is dearth of the engineers into this particular stream. So who are these biomedical engineers? They are nothing but the rare combination of medicine as well as the engineering graduates who collaborate with all the doctors as well as the researchers to basically develop and innovate number of technological solutions, come up with new set of health systems, as well as ensure that in case there is a new medical device and proper execution and correct deployment of medical equipment is done by these biomedical engineers. So what happens is these set of medical engineers basically use the engineering principles. They create solutions for the healthcare and are basically involved in the development as well as the design of the medical product as well as safety. So these biomedical engineers are basically the engineers who are also fitting into the national policy. They regulate these set of medical devices. They bring up the technical standards and specifications. They are involved in the research and development. So they integrate many things and their role becomes very imperative in any modern healthcare as well as the innovation. However, as we have just discussed, there has been a dwindling number of biomedical engineers where there is drop in the number of biomedical engineers, and what this particular article goes on to highlight is that we need more number of engineers who affirm the safety of medical devices by ensuring that they are safe and have the quality and effective for the intended purpose. So what we have to understand on the conclusion bit is that the government has come up with number of projects. Let's take for example the recent project called as the biomedical equipment management as well as the maintenance program, where they want to improve the functionality of the medical equipment in the public health facilities. However, because of the dearth of the biomedical engineers, this particular program that the government has come up with will have a major challenge. And what the government also needs to come up with is it needs to make sure that it is coming up with a certain framework, a certain structure, invest in the medical professionals like the biomedical engineers who are at the core of biomedical safety, so that these are the engineers who can make sure that they are a link between the patients as well as the doctors and make sure all these important medical equipments are safely used and delivered to the health practices of this particular ecosystem. So this is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So let's look into the next article. So the next article says deep earth. So what is this article all about? So this is very important from the prelims examination perspective. So let's focus on certain facts this article goes on to speak about. It says it is what geophys call the region that exists between 2 kilometer and 3 kilometer below the ocean floor. So you have the ocean floor, and from the ocean floor, when it is 2 to 3 kilometer deeper than the ocean floor, it is that particular particular region which is called as the deep earth. So this deep earth has all types of microorganisms like the bacteria, the archaea as well as eukarya. So it says that all three domains of life like the bacteria and archaea, which basically means microbes with no membrane bound nucleus, and then eukarya, which also means that they are multicellular organisms with cells that contain a nucleus as well as the membrane bound organelles. And what it further says is that the two types of microbes like the bacteria and archaea dominate the deep sea, and scientists even say about 70% of the earth's bacteria and archaea live in the subsurface. So kindly remember all these facts because this can be a prospective question in your prelims examination. So let's look into some of the prelims practice questions. So it says arrange the following seas from west to east. So this is important from the geography through maps. So let's see what it is. It is Alberon, Adriatic Sea, Aegean Sea and Levantine Sea, and the answer for this is 1, 2 and 3, 4. So let's look into the map here. So it says the first sea is the Alberon Sea, and then you have the Adriatic Sea followed by the Aegean Sea as well as the Levantine Sea. So this is what is the explanation for that particular question. So let's look into the next question. It says with reference to the Baltic Dry Index, consider the following statements. It is an economic indicator issued daily by the London based Baltic Exchange. They are restricted to the Baltic Sea countries. Select the correct answer using the code given below, and the answer for this is only one. So let's look into the explanation. So the explanation says it is an economic indicator issued by the London based Baltic Exchange, which is right, and it is not restricted to Baltic Sea countries. The index provide an assessment of the price of the moving major raw materials by sea, taking in 23 shipping routes measured on a time charter basis. The index cover handysize, supramax, panamax, capsize, dry bulk carriers as well as carrying a range of commodities including coal, iron ore as well as grain. So next we have to understand is a community of people called Manganiyas is well known for their, this is a previous year question paper, and the answer for this is musical tradition in the northwest India. So let's look into the main space question. It says self-help groups have not only empowered women but have also brought about attitudinal change among all stakeholders towards women development. Discuss. So kindly write all your answers for today. We will not be discussing this. We will be discussing this answer day after tomorrow. And what I want you guys to do is, this particular exam has 3 rounds: the prelims, the mains as well as the interview round. We will not be successful until we clear all the 3 rounds, and the most important point is the marks. And where are you getting your maximum marks? It is in your mains examination. So until and unless you don't start writing up and post your answer, it means that you'll clear the prelims examination, but the mains will be a tougher call. So what you have to do is write all your answers, make sure that you guys check it amongst yourself, have a peer review so that we can also contribute from our BYJU'S team as well. So write, comment and flood our comment section with your answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.